What's going on, y'all?
Welcome to another episode. Today we have a very special guest. But before we get to that, please like, rate, subscribe, do all of those things. Leave us a comment. Tell us how much you love us.
Yeah.
How much you want us to keep doing this.
Yep.
Today's episode, we are at Quinn Chapel, which is super historic.
Super historic. Long story short, it's the first Black congregational church in Chicago.
It is. Yeah. It's wild. And we're here with a very special guest, Bonnie from from Landmark, Illinois. Not Chicago, Landmark, Illinois. And we can't wait to get into this conversation.
Yeah, a lot of history here. We're going to talk about landmarking, this building specifically, some other things.
Let's get into it.
So lay your head down, lay your head down. Breathe out.
I'm Bonnie McDonald, and I am the president and CEO of Landmarks Illinois, which is the statewide preservation organization.
And
that sounds really fancy.
Yeah, I was about to say, you got a lot of work.
That's right. Yes. The title, was something I laughed at because we are a 10-person organization.
That's irrelevant.
So it's very fancy. It sounds like I run some multinational corporation.
I mean,
for a whole state though.
For a whole state,
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
Just honestly, Illinois is the 12th biggest land area state. If we, talk about, the sort
population
of meta about borders and
right,
they exist, but in the stance of states, it's a very big state. And I often think of this as the hub of so much history in the United States. We could go on lots of pathways today, but I know we want to stick with one topic.
I do have a question kind of off topic. What is, you can answer this later if you want to, but what is one of the coolest pieces of history in the whole state of Illinois that you, I know that's a loaded,
an unfair question.
I know.
And then we're just going to send this to everyone you didn't mention.
Right. Which one did you want to save the most? No.
Which one do you think is the only one that deserves to be saved?
So I'm sorry.
No.
I want to say that when we were talking about this, this is really a privilege to be with you two. So thank you. We appreciate everything that 77 Flavors that you are both doing to celebrate and talk about the importance of history. And when we were talking about it, this place is so important to not only Chicago and our state, but our nation and the world. We're in Quinn Chapel AME Church right now, which is technically part of the South Loop, but is really connected to the history of Bronzeville, the history of Chicago, going back to its founding.
So what makes it so special?
Yeah, so many things.
So many things.
I think one of the most special aspects of Quinn Chapel is the congregation itself. So we're in this house of prayer. We're in this sacred site right now. But this place houses the history and memories of generations of Black Americans who have called Chicago home. And so this place, it reflects the first Black congregation ever formed in the city of Chicago, 1844. And it wasn't here, this space was built much later in 1892. But what's special is that people started meeting in a house so that they could share their faith. And then it grew. Of course, the congregation grew, but this space was purpose built by the congregation for the congregation, and it's remarkable because the space, and I'm sure you're going to see more pictures of it, but it reflects the importance of Black culture. It was built for that congregation.
And I think the coolest thing about this is that, like you said, it was started literally in a house, and in a house over State and Randolph, like in a place you wouldn't, I say this respectfully, but expect Black people to have been. Because when you think of State and Randolph right now, you know what I mean? Like it's very different than what it was way back when.
Absolutely.
And so to hear that beginning is something remarkable.
Yeah, of course. So Black Chicagoans were living, across the city, of course, but really centering their activities, centering their faith here in the South Loop, essentially. And of course, that grew as the first wave of the Great Migration, and the second wave of the Great Migration formed Bronzeville, as number one, a successful community, but one that was forced to be in this boundary as well.
Yeah, they were bounded to that area,
right.
And so we aren't far from the original location, and if you don't know, the original location burned down. Chicago fire, you probably heard of that. Probably heard of that. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Crazy. This fire broke out, right? A cow knocked over. Yeah, no. I do not want to perpetuate that one. So this, when it comes to like landmarking this and like everything that it brings to the community, how did that come about? And how do you go about something this monumental when you think about what it means to the people?
Yeah, absolutely. What is a landmark?
Right.
What does that mean? Because it has a lot of meaning. And it's not only special for the recognition that it gives, but it also comes with a certain amount of power. Power of the community, but also power of the city to do things about those landmarks. So, just in its basic form, Chicago Landmark is a place that we say is special. And this one, I think, is especially important to note that it was created as designated as a Chicago Landmark in 1977. And that was really early in the process in the city of designating things. So the ordinance that allowed us to do that was passed in 1968. And so it's 9 years later when they were still doing things like Frank Lloyd Wright and recognizing white history in places that were of architectural significance. Now, this is, of course, architecturally significant, but it was recognized as, again, this house of worship for the first Black congregation.
I feel like Chicago always has to be different or special when it comes to things. Is there anything about that ordinance that makes it, like, sets it apart?
Absolutely. So the Chicago ordinance is fairly early on in the United States for the creation of this ability to landmark. And people can go back and look, and New York City is usually the one that's that's named. But this is only, I think, 2 years after the New York ordinance. Pardon me if I've got the date wrong.
It's okay.
Everybody out there is going to catch it.
Oh, they always find the mess ups. They're
going to find the mess up. And it's going to be in the comments.
She doesn't know what she's talking about.
Chicago, of course, being this city of first-class design and architecture and history in our nation, they got on it early, which we can be proud of them. But even more than that, what I so appreciate about those who created this is that it doesn't have an associated date with it. So people might have heard, the National Register, which is the national version of this. That you have to be 50 years old or older, which there's some unique aspects to that, but I'm just going to go with what is sort of the common knowledge, is that places are usually designated only when they're 50 years or older, because there's some unique thoughts, of course, by those who created it that,
only old things are worth preserving.
Yeah. And that at 50, it's old.
Right.
You can't be great from the start.
Yeah. That's a little aside for those of us approaching, the age of 50. But in Chicago, they recognize that something could be significant that was younger than 50 years old. And we have places that have been designated that were earlier than 50 years old. I think the Inland Steel Building, I think might have been one of those. So again, I'm going to get corrected. But, so other cities have followed suit to create this 50-year rule, but Chicago was unique in having no date.
No date. And is there like what's the criteria for you to kind of take on a project and help a place be landmarked or saved or whatever?
The recognized.
Recognized.
Yeah, let me first say, those who have the power, and I mean, it is a power, it's part of the police power, so to speak, that the city has the right to do zoning, for example. That is held within the government, and we are not. We are a nonprofit organization. And sometimes that is really beneficial because people are afraid to talk to the city officials if they have code violations, if they're trying to figure out if landmarking is right for them. So we create, hopefully, a space where people feel safe talking about what this means. And we get involved whenever something's special to people. Places are important to people because of memory, because of identity, job creation, the environment, so many reasons that our existing places matter. But oftentimes people don't know where to begin. Like, what do I do?
Yeah, where do you start?
Where do you start? It depends. It depends on sort of what a person or a community wants and needs. So we try to listen. And, oftentimes it's kind of diagnosing, and triaging what does somebody need. It might be help understanding that landmarking process and what it means, because it comes with certain benefits and restrictions. So we want to be honest and make sure people understand what it really means.
I know that like one of the benefits is kind of like preserving the look of the place. Like if it's being renovated, it has to be done to it's like original how it originally looked. But what are some other benefits? I mean, it can't be torn down, right?
Yeah, that's right. So our ordinance in Chicago has what we kind of call teeth, right? It has an anti-demolition provision, so that essentially we do everything we can in the city to avoid demolishing our places that are special, that tell our story. Yeah.
So that you answered my question. Walgreens.
Well, we're done then.
Oh yeah, we're done. Cut the cameras. We're done. Because I was waiting to jump in with Walgreens. So Walgreens is not this. The building doesn't stand. It's nothing there. And we did an episode, and we went to the location where it should have been.
Yeah.
And we didn't see anything. And we were like, Walgreens is such an institution.
Yes, across the world, the nation,
yeah,
right? Yes.
And we were like, we can't find anything, and we searched.
Yeah.
Nothing but
And
lots.
that has happened a lot where we'll know something existed in this site. It doesn't exist anymore, but and there's nothing. There's no plaque. There's no
Is there anything that could be done for those type of locations, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have just a couple of examples. One, I think, relates to the importance of having that place. Now, we're having a discussion in preservation about prioritizing people. That's what at Landmarks Illinois we prioritize people using these spaces and what they need, and that how do we adapt places to what people need? Like this has an elevator that you came up, Dario, for example.
Oh yeah.
So that is an aspect. And when we lose these places, it is really tough to remember.
Yeah.
Right.
It becomes harder and harder to remember what happened in a place and why it's important. So that erasure of place is also about erasing memory and erasing history.
Right.
So telling that story is, part of ensuring we know ourselves at its basic level. So the work, I want to call out the work of Layla Wills, who is working with the Black Panther Party, the Historical Preservation Society of the Illinois Black Panther, Association, Illinois Black Panthers, and Layla is going around and she is putting markers in spaces where there were sites associated with the Black Panther Party here in Illinois. And, she talks about this aspect of erasure, intentional erasure.
Right. I was going to say, do you feel like historically has that ever happened intentionally where sites were demolished or not preserved to kind of like help erase that history?
I'm sure there are more than we know, because it had happened without so many people knowing. There's always someone who knows because that place is important to them, but it might not have been written about. It might not have been put in the paper. It might not have been talked about outside of the community. And so I think about public housing, for example, in this city. We have the incredible work of the National Public Housing Museum here to remember, the important place that public housing has had in creating a safe space for those who needed safe, affordable housing.
I was, we talk about the erasure, and we just mentioned eminent domain of the expressway, and we talk about like what was lost. Who knows? I mean, like in that area, like it was just wiped out. It was wiped out. So, is there? I think you might have answered this, but is there anything that you all know of that you're fighting for to like at least get a marker there, or at least make it more known to people who might say, "Hey, look, this was there." And I'm like, yeah, you're right, it was there. Here's the story.
I feel like your list is so long. I feel like you shared a list of like hundreds of places.
Right. Yes, we're. As we were talking about our collective work to, elevate, amplify these really important stories and the layers of history in a place, we shared with you our list of, Landmarks Illinois has helped people save 26,000 places all across the, state of Illinois since we were founded. And so I think that we've tended to prioritize saving the places that are still here. Now that work is continually changing, and I think we're evolving how we think about our work, how we consider these regulations that we're talking about, who has access to them and who doesn't. How do we make them more accessible, transparent? You can navigate without needing an expert to do that. But that still leaves those who don't have access or whose history is not eligible, so to speak. So there are the criteria. So I think you were asking, Sarah, about the, sort of how do we pick a place. Landmarking has a set of criteria that are fixed. Now you can sort of, flex them for lots of stories. But then the second part of it is that, does it have enough historic material like we see behind us to tell that story? Now that is, in some ways, it can prevent the landmarking, the protection of these stories, like Tanika Lewis Johnson's work. Which she's just putting her own landmarkers on there because she was told that that would not these homes in Inglewood that were subject to land sale contracts, which is a shameful part of our history that needs to be remembered. It was not eligible because the places have changed too much over time. Well, that is I think a part of our work that is really difficult for so many of us to stand for, and we want to change that.
Yeah, how do you kind of balance working with the city and like kind of like the I can never pronounce that word, bureaucracy, and like knowing that things could potentially be rejected for a myriad of reasons, or like someone's, I don't know what like this project that you just mentioned, and then like, how do you keep going? How do you not
without
lose,
getting
like,
discouraged?
Like, how do you do that? I don't know how you do
and not grand out.
Sure.
I feel like
important place to start is that those who work for the city work to help people navigate this process. I just want to celebrate that they are doing their best to try to use what they were given to find ways to celebrate history, to make sure that they are helping people to protect the places that are important to them. So just to say that bureaucracy is sometimes inflicted upon those who
I feel like it's never the individuals, it's obviously like a systemic thing. Like it's not it's never.
That's right. That's right. And thus, probably a whole other show would be the systems that we have created in government and how they prevent equity, from happening in communities that have been underserved through systemic racism. So, landmarking can be considered part of this process as we think about what we've talked about with Tanika's project is, by the fact that they were the families there were denied the opportunity to use financing based on home equity loans. They could not improve properties all the time, and thus, there was deterioration, which is why they're not eligible.
Yeah, exactly. It's a weird cycle.
Yes, So it's herein lies the complication of needing to do something that is essentially legally defensible, because the government needs to have due process. We need to understand what the process is. I think we all support that. But when you have a process, it also can make it difficult to have the kind of flexibility to enable those differing needs of a place and of the people around it. So I would say we are sometimes working together with the city to help, and sometimes we are a watchdog to ensure that process is followed.
Man, how is that looking over the city's shoulders every now and then?
Exactly. Yes. Landmarking, the process that the city goes through is about the public being able to engage in that process. It is a public process. So I just want to say that it's important for people to pay attention to what's coming and have a voice in that process, because we want people to have a voice in the places that are being saved in their community. It hasn't always been that way.
How can people be involved in that process? Is it like going to community meetings, or what is that look like?
This the process of landmarking starts with a nomination, essentially, and the city allows for suggestions from the public through their program committee, and then the city chooses which they're going to bring forward for a nomination process. But then it's open to public meetings. So it comes to the Commission on Chicago Landmarks, which posts its agendas online, and people can come and make public comment. And then it goes on to the city council, and then again, there's opportunities for public comment. So come to the podium with us and say something.
I was just about to say, now it's your time for your voice. Your voice to be heard. This is the moment that you have. Before we end, I want to know what's kind of like the next big landmarking that you're working on that you look to here in the city of Chicago?
Can you tell us?
I was going to say I'd have to kill it.
Yeah, okay, well,
That's
don't.
fair.
Well,
We're in a church, so what better place?
No, scratch that. No, I want to say that, sometimes we're having conversations with people early on, and they want to, as I said, explore what landmarking means. We're also, I think, exploring those communities that, especially our sacred places like this one, who really need financial resources. So I'm thinking of the work that was done on Mount Pisgah Baptist Church, and trying to allow for, or the Greenstone Church in Pullman, to help make what's called the Adopt a Landmark funding available to do things that are really needed in the church for its maintenance for the building. There's been a very active advocacy effort to landmark the Thompson Center.
Right.
And so I want to say that is not going to, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't want to, I'm going to get lots of comments there as well that, now that the exterior has been removed, it would certainly be a much more difficult process to landmark. But it's being reused, and that's preservation.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a landmark to be something significant, and it doesn't have to be a landmark to be preserved. Use is preservation.
Yes.
Right.
And so not everything is going to be a landmark, but we can still value and honor the places that you talk about in every community, every neighborhood, because we believe there's something special in every community. And Chicago, has, now I'm getting the stats, so Chicago has 550,000 buildings.
Yeah, crazy. That's a crazy number.
550,000. Now, how many of them do you think are old?
A lot? Not a lot? A lot?
Many. I don't know. I don't know.
What's the right answer?
The right answer is ding. 90%.
Wow.
So 90% of them were essentially built, before 1960. So it is.
So that's the threshold.
I'm going to tell my mom that you said that that's old. Because she was.
Right. Wait, I mean, it's in the ordinance.
I'm going to get in trouble now. Yeah.
So it's so old.
So
like actually almost
just remember,
ancient.
50. Some people say 50 is old, right?
That's true.
But it's important to note that for so many reasons. I mean, number one, our built environment, this incredible potential to reuse places as part of our climate change mitigation efforts. So by keeping these, and a lot of them are masonry buildings, going back to Dario, you mentioned the Great Chicago Fire. Chicago's full of masonry buildings because of that. So reusing those buildings is reusing the material that we have. We can be a sustainable city if we think about preservation as part of the solution. We also should be thinking about things like lead-based paint, though, and how do we make them safe? Because our kids in Chicago have some of the highest lead poisoning levels in the entire country.
Yeah. Our apartment is like 140 years old.
Yeah, right.
Are you chewing on the lead-based paint?
Our dog is.
Oh.
He ate the baseboards when he was a puppy.
Right. Well,
don't tell the landlord.
There are methods, though. I mean, this is where we can provide information that is helpful to people to find information from the Environmental Protection Agency, to find those who know how to safely, essentially encapsulate that lead or remove that lead-based paint. So, it's thinking about these buildings as, systems, the places that we live, how they work, how they operate, and how they can serve our needs in a safe way. Thinking about energy efficiency and the work that Elevate Energy does to help people do that, or the Chicago Bungalow Association. So there are lots of resources out there. Coming back to our job is to help people find these resources.
And how can people support the work that you guys do? And kind of like, if anyone wants to help support you, I don't know what the next process would be.
We did not pay them to ask that question.
We're just smart. We're just smart.
So we would love to have the support, because Landmarks Illinois is a 501c3 nonprofit. Every donation to us is a charitable donation. But what's important is that we provide all these services that we talked about for free. We don't charge anybody for this work that we do. So we are dependent on donations, and they can go to Landmarks with an S, landmarks.org, and there's a donate button, there's a join button. You can come to our events. But also, I just want to say, we are here in one of the landmarks in the city, an incredibly important place, and please support Quinn Chapel as well, and their efforts to preserve and restore this place. Come to a service, celebrate, and support those who are really stewards of not only history that we're making today, and we had, but for future generations who are inheriting what we're saving. Yeah.
I must say, it is looking at the pulpit there, and it's who's been there, Obama, governors here in Illinois, you know, Martin Luther King, and we filmed and recorded in many places. This has got to be one of the coolest ones by far. So thank you for taking the time out, what you do to come sit and talk to us
for real.
enlighten us on the process, and we got work to do.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for having us, for having Landmarks Illinois here as your partner, for giving us this ability to talk about this process, which is a public process. And there's so many places that we can celebrate and tell stories. And thank you for what you're doing to celebrate history, because nerds unite around history.
You hear that? Unite.
That's really the soundbite, actually.
That is.
Thank you so much for having me today.
No problem. No problem. Now we got to make a TikTok. So.
Yeah.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that
All right. That's the episode.
I've always wondered so much about landmarks and how they happen. So connecting with Bonnie is such a cool idea in such a legendary space.
It's
kind of surreal to be standing.
We've done some cool stuff in our time.
This one is, I mean, the amount of people that have stepped into this church
Absolutely
is crazy.
insane. The fact that we just get to be in here and do a podcast.
Wild. So we're so grateful. Thank you so much to Quinn Church for letting us in here.
Absolutely. Thank
we
you.
really appreciate it. The space is beautiful. Go check out our reel that's going to be posted on our Instagram to learn more about the cool facts about this church. We talked a little bit about it, but you'll see more of that.
Also, follow us and keep this thing going.
Yeah. And if you watched till the end, go ahead and leave a little church emoji.
Or a cross.
Some.
Or black person. Jesus.
Black Jesus.
Black Jesus. Leave that in the comments.
You know?
Until next time, we will see you.
Peace.